Welcome guys on another episode of our Launch Lab podcast. We are today with Cameron, one of our Launch Lab members, founder of Polysurance. And today's episode we're gonna delve into the topic of competition, a bit of InsurTech, and what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Thank you for being here, Cameron.
Thank you.
Cameron, can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so I'm Cameron. I'm the founder of Polysurance. I used to work as an actuary in the insurance industry, basically doing insurance pricing. I started my career at Willis Towers Watson in their pricing team there, and after that, kind of gone on to work for a lot of different insurance companies, both big and small, some of the biggest in the world, like Munich Re, down to, startups who haven't even launched yet. So basically helping them do their insurance pricing. And then obviously started Polysurance after that and not looked back since.
We're gonna talk a lot about Polysurance, but just before that, for people like me who don't understand anything about insurance, can you tell us a bit more about pricing, what you actually kind of do, and just help us understand? So what is the role of an actuary?
So I guess my roles have tended to be, so obviously it's setting prices, and that can kind of vary depending on what type of insurance that you're talking about, but really it's trying to use past data and market data to decide what price that you need to set for an insurance policy. So that's going to be based on the expected cost of claims across an entire cohort of policyholders, as well as kind of market conditions that will affect the competitiveness of the price and the profitability and everything. So it's kind of a mixture of analytics, machine learning, that type of thing, as well as sort of judgment.
And you don't work anymore as an actuary?
No, not really.
So what made you like coming from this kind of comfortable position, actually working in the city, to starting your own? Can you walk us about your journey as a founder? Yeah,
I guess I'd sort of had this nagging feeling for a while. It's a good life being an actuary. You get paid reasonably well, and but maybe wanted something a bit more challenging, a bit more interesting. So decided to kind of branch out and obviously start Polysurance.
Were you the kind of guy with the lemonade stand when you were 12, or is it something that you realized way after that actually you wanted to be an entrepreneur? When did that
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've had had some instances in my youth. Kind of, the one thing I did was like selling polos in school.
But not far from lemonade, isn't it?
Yeah, until they all got confiscated. But yeah, maybe I've had it in me, even though I wouldn't really always have considered myself the type.
What is Polysurance?
So we are a computer vision-based telematics startup that helps both insurance companies and fleet managers better understand and mitigate against driving risk. So we basically have a dash cam that you fit into a vehicle that will monitor the road and monitor the driver, and basically try and assess the level of risk of that driver and their driving ability, and then at the same time try and help them improve their driving by sort of pointing out incidents and having sort of in-cab alerts and things to basically help nudge them in the right direction and stop bad behaviours.
So the bigger vision behind Polysurance, is it to stop bad driving behaviour?
I think in part it is, yeah. We I guess I initially started the company thinking of it more from an analytics point of view. So how do we better understand the level of risk of a driver? So prior to this, the markets introduced telematics, which uses sort of location and acceleration data to try and figure out how well people drive. The problem with that is it doesn't really, give the level of, I guess, the added analytical capabilities that an insurance company would really want, and the added benefit is reasonably marginal compared to sort of existing pricing methods. So, my thinking around that was it's probably because there's not enough data to really understand how well someone's driving. There's no context, and it's quite a sort of low resolution kind of view of the driving environment. And so what we wanted to do was basically try and leverage the same sort of technology they're using in self-driving cars, but bring that into the insurance analytics space. So understand the environment around you through computer vision, as well as using the same sort of stuff in traditional telematics to actually go and predict risk. And that's kind of where we started from.
And where are you now?
So we basically selling our technology to fleets and partnering with insurance companies to use our technology, doing sort of three separate parts. So there's obviously the as we said just before, looking at reducing the risk, so understanding incidents and trying to help alert drivers to help them improve their behaviour, and also for kind of fleet managers to be able to monitor that across their fleets. The other part is looking at the analytics, so what I was just discussing about taking all of that visual data, the standard telematics data, and using that to predict insurance risk. And the last part is around claims, so after an accident's happened, how do we better approach the sort of claims journey from first notification of loss all the way through to settlement, using the data that we've collected on our cameras. So that's kind of where we're at.
Which stage is Polysurance?
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Like you talked about where you are on your product and what you focus on. I wanted to share with our audience a bit more about like what type of customer, have you raised fund, and what is kind of the next move? Yeah,
so we've recently raised funds. I'd say we've got some level of product market fit, but there's probably a way to go there still. But we're kind of getting to the point where we need to start scaling out a bit. We've got customers from taxi fleets to bus companies to oil and gas delivery, and starting to partner with a few insurance companies as well, that you'll hear about soon.
Right. Are you allowed to share whether, first the amount you raised, and also where is your main activities? Is it in the UK, or I know that you do also like overseas activities, so are you allowed to share a bit of insight about that?
Yeah, so I can share a bit. I guess we've raised money from a VC firm that's based in the Middle East, and they part of what they do is help companies from around the world tap into that Middle Eastern market. So we're obviously based in the UK, and we've launched here and have customers here. But we've obviously expanded out into the Middle East in UAE and Saudi, and soon to be other countries in that region. So we kind of see the Middle East as being kind of greenfield, and we're, I think, well positioned to kind of take that market.
Well positioned compared to your competitors.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you let's go a bit more on the competitive landscape. How would you assess the current competition market for Polysurance?
Yeah, so I guess talking about the three stages I was saying before, the risk prevention, the analytics, and the claims side. I'd say most of our competition is really in the risk prevention side. So there's a lot of other computer vision telematics products and competitors that kind of sit in that space. I think the problem that's really existed from the insurance point of view is that that's kind of only where they sit, and they don't have a really good insurance proposition. So how we look to differentiate is really on that side, is doing that risk analytics, doing that claims piece. Whereas, the other side of it is, it's obviously important, but is not really well differentiated in the market.
So would you say that Polysurance is differentiating itself drastically from its competitors?
Yeah, I think the underlying technology that we're using is slightly different from what our competitors do. And the reason for that is because we want to collect data in a certain way to help insurance companies, and because of that, it's not easy for those incumbents to kind of come into our space. Also given my background as in the insurance industry, like we're very focused on meeting the needs of insurance companies rather than just trying to be another standard telematics product.
So would you say that your USP is that your product would plug itself very well within the insurance industry?
Yeah. So we can give them the really granular understanding of people's driving behaviour and help with that claims process of just giving them like automated FNOL, speeding up the whole claims process. Doing damage estimates and all that kind of stuff.
I wanted to, especially with you, focus a bit more on the competition part of the startup. I understand your USP. However, I can guess that there must be other startups who are, I'm sure, doing something very similar. Maybe not in the UK, maybe other countries, or maybe in the US. How did you approach the market knowing that there are more established players in it? And because it's something not just for you, but also to share with our audience, kind of practical steps on like, how do you go into a market where there are already incumbent players or even worse, incumbent startups? How do you make yourself a space in it? Do you just give up and go into like kind of blue ocean strategy, or what's your process? What can you,
It's obviously a difficult thing to do. We've probably got a few good things going for us in that the market size is obviously incredibly big, so there's a lot of space for competition. In terms of how we've kind of approached it, there's it's clear talking with other insurance companies that have used some of our competitors' products that they're not happy with it. It just doesn't meet their needs, and so trying to, it's not been that difficult to try and win over some of those in conversation, because it's like they know that it's not what they actually want, and it's not really fit for purpose for the insurance industry, because all they've tried to do is take a fleet product and shoehorn it into an insurance context, and that doesn't really work. So where we've obviously built our product from the ground up purposely to meet the needs of insurance companies.
Why do you think that they are doing it badly? Like, do you think they are just purposefully doing bad job, or do you think that they actually think that they are doing good job and you are just better?
I think it's more where they've come from. So they, their product initially is not really targeted at insurance companies. It's targeted at fleets. So if you the product that you sell to a fleet manager is very different from the product that you need to sell to an insurance company, and so trying to take that same product and just shoehorn it into the needs of someone else doesn't always work.
You are in a scaling up phase for Polysurance. How do you make sure that you maintain your position? You don't make the same mistake as you had just described, like just why you are scaling, because, you see what I mean?
I mean, it's a difficult question to answer. I think what we try and do certainly is obviously getting a lot of feedback from our customers, of really understanding what it is that they want, what it is that they need, and trying to see patterns in there of where we can innovate and where even just where we can partner with someone else that's actually good in that space. To build a product that adequately kind of meets the needs of our customers. We know we can't build everything. We don't have the huge resources or team size to kind of conquer the entire world, at least not yet. So we just have to pick our battles a little bit and find partnerships elsewhere where maybe it's not core to what we're trying to do, but is helpful for the product as a whole.
But do you not fear to kind of lose the initial line or vision you had by partnering and diluting kind of your identity and what you were aiming to do at first?
I wouldn't say so. I think because our focus is quite firmly on the thing that meeting the needs of insurance companies. The problem is the insurance company isn't the one that's driving around in the car, right? So you've got drivers in their trucks and everything, and they have different needs than the insurance company. And so for us to compete with some of the incumbent players, like we can just partner with someone that has a similar product to them, and then keep the core of our business, our technology that's really focused on how do we meet the needs of insurance companies.
We talked about at some point your main differentiating factor, and I know that one of the key words that you repeated was innovation. You were mentioning your technology. How do you continually, because for me innovation it's just my personal definition, is like there is a statu quo, you break it and you try to disrupt or find a more efficient way of going from A to B. But how do you continually innovate? Because you see what I mean? Like then it's not innovation anymore. It's like more. You see what I mean? Like, are you not afraid of like having another incumbent just not innovating on technology, but finding another way of streamlining the process or the problem you are solving?
I think the way that we're approaching it is obviously, trying to hone in on the technology specifically. So we have a very heavy focus on how do we build the best possible product that is not. I guess the problem with that is it's not really easy just to replicate some of the things that we're trying to do. It's not like there's infinite numbers of people with kind of great research backgrounds and I think we can at least for some time use our advantage in the kind of technology that we've got to stay ahead. It's not easy for an incumbent to, I guess, replace their entire fleet of devices that exist in the world to catch up to that kind of thing, and when they're not really suitable for I guess competing at the same level, it's obviously a big risk for us still that an incumbent player could change the way that their product works entirely to come and compete with us. But at the end of the day, if they were going to, they might have done it already. So,
And why do you think they haven't?
it's just people have different focuses. I mean, everyone says like, oh, what if Google just comes in and goes into it? Well, it's like Google have tried doing lots of things and failed at a lot of them as well. So they're really good at search. Let them do search.
And if you had an advice for one of our listeners who maybe not necessarily in the insurtech industry, but more generally in startup, and was struggling on how to approach its competition, and what can you share some of the practical steps that you used for yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think getting into a competitive industry, you really need to understand that industry very well to understand how you're going to compete. I think, as I say, we come from a insurance background, and trying to compete in the insurance telematics space is, it's like you really need to understand how that currently works, what the existing players are doing, even figuring out, what people they've hired, what jobs they're looking at, to figure out like what sort of things have they got in the pipeline that they're trying to achieve. So it'll give you some ideas to, what the future is for your competitors as well as yourself. So, I think it's really comes down to like an understanding of the market. Hopefully, if you can try and go into something that's less competitive, because then it's a bit it's not nice to have competitors sometimes.
Yeah, but that's kind of the big debate, isn't it? Do you go in an area where, like, what they say is a red ocean, where there is competition, but there is a market, so it's proven? Or do you go in a kind of untapped market where, of course, there is no competition, but maybe there is no competition for a reason, because there is no demand? How do you balance this out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good thing about obviously there being an existing market, existing competition, is that you're probably not guessing so much as to whether your product has potential customers or not. Whereas going into something that doesn't really exist yet, there's like a kind of a big question mark as to whether it should exist or not, and proving that's not always easy. There's no clear-cut answer, is there? It kind of just depends on what your idea is, and figuring out in each case like what you should do about it. So
let's take the example of Polysurance. At the beginning of Polysurance, how have you made this decision on going in telematics where there is some kind of competition, instead of you proposing a different type of solution? Because basically what you are trying to do is reducing, if you are serving insurance, is like having a better pricing system. But I assume that there was maybe 100 different ways of doing that, but you chose this one in particular. How did you make that decision, and what were the factors you considered?
Yeah, so probably I have to talk a little bit about how we started.
That would be interesting.
In that, so kind of the initial plan for Polysurance was about was actually to create an insurance company in the motor insurance space in the UK, which is notoriously competitive as well. So the market on average loses money in the UK for motor insurance. So what I'd say that we need to be really successful in that is a few things. Or to be profitable is to have a really strong underwriting strategy, which I think I had. Have a better analytics, better pricing ability than other people, and be operationally efficient. So that's kind of it's like, if you want to make money in this market, you kind of have to be good in those three areas. Due to a few reasons, we kind of obviously didn't end up going down the setting up our own insurance company route. But taking that second part of how can we be better at pricing when, it's effectively an arms race, right? Like everyone wants the new shiny piece of data, the new shiny machine learning method that we can use for just getting that tiny little bit of extra value out of your risk models, because that can be the difference between making money and not. And so it's like, how do you do that? Well, it's just kind of at that time, when we're thinking about it, you've got the evolution of kind of like self-driving technology, and looking at that and saying, okay, well, that's really what we can probably use to understand. Like, if you can tell something, teach a technology how to drive a car, that should be good enough for understanding how someone actually drives. And so that's kind of how we got into that space, and then obviously transition from trying to do the end-to-end insurance piece with that computer vision technology to just focusing on the technology itself.
How do you react with those? We talked about big incumbents. We talked about Google. Let's take the example of Google. They have been doing a couple of research on self-driving car. I assume that in a couple of years they will probably have like good enough models that can just ride it or drive itself. Would that mean that Polysurance would be dead? Or what would be Polysurance's reaction to very good self-driving car by a big name? Google or Microsoft?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a few things in that. So obviously, if we can get to a point where, I guess the technology that we're using for understanding the self-driving is really around the perception side of it. So understanding the environment around you. So any advancements in that technology is kind of helpful for us, because we just have to keep on top of the research that's going on and make sure that we keep up to date. I guess the risk for us is if all the cars are self-driving, is there actually a need for our product? There's obviously like significant time scale to kind of get from not having any self-driving cars to all the cars on the road being self-driving. So I'm not too worried right now about that. I guess from an analytics point of view, there's clearly this evolution going on, and there will be for some time. It doesn't really feel like full self-driving's quite round the corner just yet. But the great thing about what we're doing with our product is trying to assess as well how good is a self-driving car, like what's that level of risk, and then can we incorporate that into our risk models as well. So if you have a technology that's using the same underlying technology as the thing that's driving the car, well, that's helpful for understanding actually how risky that vehicle is when it's self-driving for insurance purposes. And so, not only can we assess actual drivers' behavior, but we can also assess the technology's behavior to see, where, I guess, help insurers in that space better understand the underlying risk as well.
So it's interesting, you are more kind of welcoming it more than being afraid or being pushed back by it.
Yeah, well, new technology is not always a bad thing, is it? So
let's focus on on the last part, is more generally on entrepreneurship, and if you could share first to one of our audience. I'm sure there is students. If you were to talk to yourself when you were a student, and maybe share a mistake that you have made and you would have done differently, kind of a message to yourself, what would it be?
Sorry, do you mean more generally, or like as through starting a company?
I would say through starting a company.
So, I think the the key part is around your team, especially at the start. Is really picking who the right people to come on board, and making sure that people have the right skill sets or are flexible enough to kind of do lots of different things. It's very difficult in the early stages, and so you need people that are flexible. But obviously, as a tech company, we probably didn't have enough of our initial team that were technically capable. It was just me, and that was very problematic. So the team early on had to basically completely change, and that's kind of a tough lesson learned.
So, So, what's your lesson that you need more tech people, or was the lesson that you need more quality people?
I think it was, that we needed more tech people in the team. What I'm trying to say is really think about what it is that your team needs before you start, rather than just, these guys are great to work with. We've worked together before, and I know they're good, but it has to be more than just that. It has to be are these actually the right fit for what we're trying to do? Especially, it's quite different moving from working in a huge insurance company to being in a startup where that's just you're responsible for everything, and not everyone is the right personality or has the breadth of skills to kind of go into that.
How do you make that judgment call? I got you, huh?
It's tough. I mean, I think there's obviously in understanding the skill sets that you need to kind of get you from 0 to 1. You can obviously understand what people's experiences are, and as I said, from our team, we definitely needed more. It's we're a deep learning focused company. If only one person can do any of the programming or machine learning or anything, that's not really enough when we had 5 people. So I think you've kind of got to just think about, are these the right skill sets at this time for you as a group trying to start up?
So it would be really the team building aspect that you would have done differently.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things I would have done differently, but that's probably the big lesson learned from the start. And I was also probably a bit too slow to rectify that as well. So
yeah, I think I guess there is this emotional component that comes into play, because in the end you're kind of hanging out with, I guess your first team is made of friends more than colleagues, and you don't want to lose a friend. So I can understand why it can become hard to rectify the shot.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've got to, take some of those hard decisions. When you really know the answer to it, then you've just got to pull the trigger and get it done.
It's interesting because most people who have interviewed, and whenever we go to the stage of asking what would be the mistake or an advice, and no one ever told us, oh, competition killed us, or oh, we had this employee spied on it. Everyone is either saying that team building or listening to customer. And I find it interesting because you would think that all of the different answers, all of the potential ways you would kill your startup, but it looks like everyone is coming down to those two fundamentals, listening, really observing, gathering data from your customer, and the other one is just team.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, if the issue is really like your actual product or, your competition or something, then like there's clearly something a lot more fundamentally wrong with the startup, which is like, should it exist in the first place? So it maybe doesn't surprise me that much that people are probably, people struggle because of their team or because of other issues that like they just didn't get it right, rather than the actual thing itself being the wrong idea or the wrong marketplace.
Now a bit more of the book. I was obviously we spent a lot of time. You're a Launch Lab member. I spent a lot of time with you. One of the first thing I was always surprised with you, and coming back to the more entrepreneurial journeys, like you are having a very comfortable position, having a good title, and yet I would see you every morning coming at the lab and feeling that you had everything against you and still pushing. I was like, why is this guy like going through so much fun? I'm like, still sometimes like wondering like, why on earth is he doing all of this? Like you were like having big names, big title, really like kind of living the life, and yet ending up here in like just working like 12 hours a day. You're not even being paid or so. What makes someone like being in your position, where I'm sure a lot of students, a lot of even actuaries, like especially in London, like most people would be dreaming to have the names you had backing you, and yet just going in such a crazy journey?
Yeah, I think I must be an idiot to be honest. I don't know. I guess you just got to have some self-motivation sometimes. I can always go back to having a comfortable life if it doesn't work out. So there's not the huge risk to me other than the time and money lost over the period I've been doing this. But at the end of the day, I'll always be fairly comfortable in life. So, why not try and do something a bit better, a bit more exciting?
Yeah, but that can't be a reason like on its own, because I'm sure that there are other actuaries who are in the same position as you were and will still be fine, but they haven't decided to start Polysurance or whatever. But they stayed in their own. So I'm just trying to.
Well, I guess you've got to have some ambition, right? Like, not everyone cares enough to do something like that. Whereas, it's like I do want something more out of my life than just being an actuary. So
that's what I was looking for, this truth and honest answer. Is like, and yeah, I think we shouldn't be afraid of that. The whole point of the Launch Lab and even this podcast, I wanted to like personally share those stories of like people going outside of the box. We have interviewed lots of founders coming from different background with amazing journey, and they were all kind of like sharing the same stories, like having very, very good positions. And in the end, they were like, I'm way more than that. I can aim for way more than that. And I think, yeah, I just hope that this will inspire some of our audience. Thanks, guys, for being with us. Thank you, Cameron, for giving us some of your time and being around. Please don't forget to subscribe, follow us. We're going to put a bit of description and some links on how to follow up with Polysurance and Cameron. And I look forward to see you next.